my name, thinking I won't be the same. Turn fiction into fact. See what you didn't know, bruises that I'll never show, slipping on your every jab. So tighten up your fist, step into the ring with this. I hope your mama's got your back. First round, you thought you would've knocked me down. Fifth round, bleeding out the side of your mouth. Final round, blowing the sound of my name in the crowd. You didn't bust. Oh, 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 oh. You didn't bust. Oh, 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 oh. Just 'cause I took a break, you make.
Hello, hello, and welcome everyone to In Time. My name is Nicholas Lamar Soutter. Thank you for joining us. So this week we have After Dark on Friday. It's going to be another call-in show, so we hope you'll call in. Jury's out on whether or not we're going to be having Nate back. Just kidding, Nate. And then on July 17th, we'll be covering Christian apologetics from the Old Testament with Dr. Josh of Digital Hammurabi. We've been looking forward to that one for quite some time, so can't wait to have him on, and it's going to go, I think, very nicely with our series on Daniel as a fraud, and we'll be having Floyd FP back also to cover the 7 weeks of 7. I don't even remember the 7 weeks prophecy in Daniel. I'm not good at math, but we're going to have him back on to cover that. So meanwhile, today I think we're going to have a good show. If you have any questions or want to leave any comments, if you missed the show and want to leave any comments, we read all of them. We try to get back. We get back to the vast majority of them. Any thoughts, any questions, please don't hesitate. Also, we have a poll going. You'll see the poll on the bottom right-hand side of your screen. Was the Chauven sentence right? It was it too high? Was it too low? Or was it, do you think, about right? So I think we'll see how that goes throughout the night. Now, this video will get demonetized. Most of the stuff we do gets demonetized, a little over half. Just the way it is. We've decided nature of the beast on the content that we're going to be doing. So if you like our show, if you want to support it, like and subscribe is a great way to do that. Really helps us with the analytics. Share the shows that you like with people. Helps us get the word out. If you want to become a patron, that's great. You can join the Patron Hangouts every month, contribute to the development of the show. Links for that are below. And you can join us and say it's not on time, it's in time. So my guests tonight, first starting with under Maudi's shield, which we'll have to move that one, and there we are. We have Nate the lawyer. Nate, how are you?
I'm doing all right. Just relaxing right now. Just pulling up the live chat. How have you been? My camera is blurry, right? You better now.
Yeah, yep. There you go. You were pretty clear earlier.
All right. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not clear now.
No. You're clearer now. You were blurry.
Okay,
now you're clear. Okay. You are golden.
Yes. So what's going on? How's everything going? I love that intro. That intro was straight fire right now. I'm still like clapping my hands on the intro.
Oh,
that intro was fire.
Thank you so much. I'm going to do a clip of all the people who danced to it, like Courtney used to dance to it, and then we had Neil was just rocking it out when we had him on. Everybody's always dancing to that music. So, oh, thank you. Yeah, that was Yeah, we love that intro. So thank you very much for joining us. And for those of you who don't know, Nate the lawyer, he has a very successful YouTube channel. His link is in the bottom. He is was in the prosecutor's office at the ADA in New York. Former police officer, practicing lawyer, and former and or current professor. Do you still teach?
No, I taught for 2 years at the law school, so no, I don't teach anymore. This is what I do, and I have a private practice, so I take clients here and there.
All right, and so go check out Nate's channel. He does a great job of breaking down some videos. So it's gotten me turned around more than once on views. So that's great. And then we also have on tonight Ethan Prolib. Ethan, how are you?
I'm well. Thank you for having me. Good evening, gentlemen. Good evening, chat.
My pleasure. And I misspoke. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that, so I do apologize. Tonight we have on as our second guest Window and Blinds. Window and Blinds, thank you for joining us. There is an Ethan that is blocking you, but we
yes. I'll try to keep my head out of the way so you guys can chat.
All right, so gentlemen, thank you all for joining us. So there's going to be an appeal, but we've had the Chauven verdict now, and it was 22 and a half years. What are your thoughts, gentlemen, on the verdict?
Nate, you first.
You want me to go? All right.
Yeah.
Well, I think the state proved its case beyond a reasonable doubt. I think the evidence was just overwhelming, especially when they ruled out the fentanyl, because it seemed to be what the defense was hoping for. This kind of fentanyl folly. He died of a drug overdose, and Chauven was just the guy who was trying to put the cuffs on him while he died. But, when the medical evidence came in and all the doctors on both sides, all the doctors in the prosecution said it wasn't fentanyl. And then the one doctor the defense put on said he wasn't sure. I don't see how you get it was fentanyl from that evidence. You know what I'm saying? Nobody, even their side, didn't say it was fentanyl. So if you take out the fentanyl, then you have, unfortunately for him, you got what is known as an assault, because that wasn't justified. And then you have the whole department said, we don't teach nobody to do that. That's not SOP. That's something we don't do. I don't know what he was doing, right? One of the top chiefs, she was like, I don't know what he was doing. So if you have an officer who goes outside the regs and kills somebody, that's manslaughter, right? That's manslaughter in spades. But now how do you get that to murder two? Murder two is when he's, after the first 4 minutes and he goes unconscious. Now you're talking murder two. And here specifically, though, there's a quirk in the law. It's called the felony murder rule.
Mm-hmm.
So the chain of reasoning for this case goes like this. Derek Chauvin, since he wasn't authorized to do what he was doing, he committed an assault, because you treat him like he's just any other citizen. So if he was trained to do what he did, then he wouldn't have been committing an assault. He'd have been committing a lawful act, trying to effectuate an arrest as a police officer. But since they've now proven that he wasn't authorized to do that, then he has just committed assault, right? He's unauthorized to use that level of force. In committing that assault, which is a felony, so he's committing felonious assault, then if someone dies, he's strictly liable for that death. And that's the felony murder rule. Now, it's usually applied to things like bank robberies. The bank robbers go in, somebody dies, the bank robbers are getting charged with murder. But in a small amount of jurisdictions, assaults can lead to felony murder convictions. And that's what you had here. You had a felony assault occur, and in the course of that felony assault, George Floyd died. And that's where you got the felony murder. Now, the best part of this case was obviously the fentanyl, and whether he died of fentanyl, whether it's a drug overdose. And now you had all the doctors saying it wasn't a drug overdose, and their side saying they're not sure. I don't see how you don't convict on that evidence. So if all that's true, then the judge went back and found 4 aggravating factors, right? 4 legally aggravating factors beyond a reasonable doubt. So you got a jury that finds you guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Then the judge finds 4 aggravating factors. Children were there, particular cruelty. The guy was dead after 4 minutes, and you stayed on for another 5. this doesn't make any sense. Give them more time, right? Aggravating factors. Now, if you look at violated the public trust, presence of children, those were some of the aggravating factors. So if you put all that together, the standard sentence for this type of sentence for somebody without a criminal background, without a criminal history, is 150 months, which comes out to about 12 and a half years. So generally, if you have multiple aggravating factors, the law says you can double that, right? But the longest sentence anybody's ever served for like this crime, I think, was 200 months. So the judge added 170 months to he added 100 months to the sentence, or 10 years to make it 22 and a half years. And that's the reasoning the judge gave. And I think under the circumstances, I think that's an appropriate sentence, because if he was anybody else, if he wasn't an officer, he'd have only gotten 12 and a half years. So the fact that he was an officer, the fact that he violated, and the fact that it was particular cruelty, he's in for 22 and a half.
So now they had made a defense.
Well, I want to add on.
No, please. I'd much rather you, please.
Yeah, I want to add on to that real quick. I agree with everything you said, of course. And I wanted Nate to go first because Nate's the lawyer. I'm just an idiot. But I think the biggest factor for me is what the judge said at the sentencing, is that at the time, Chauven was in his care, was in his custody, and he abused his authority in such a way, in such a grossly negligent way, that George Floyd died. And that is such an important point to me because, and Nate, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know of any statute that says once a police officer has detained somebody that they're responsible for their safety. I don't know if that exists. I just don't know. But it seems to me like it should if it doesn't.
Well, that's generally the way it works, right? If you arrest someone, you have them in your custody, and that's usually there's a saying, in your custody, in your care. So it gives you a higher level of responsibility because the person's in custody. So usually, whenever you have what they call an in custody incident, like an in custody death, that's even looked upon with more scrutiny because you have control of this person. So even if the person's hurt, for instance, like when we arrested people, if someone got hurt, we'd have to take them to the hospital. And we'd have to watch them all night because they were in our care, in our custody. So this type of this incident, just the fact that he was handcuffed, is something that's really, I think, really even more egregious. And I think most cops and most law enforcement officers who look at this are going to say the same thing. This is not how it's done.
Yeah, and I remember very recently, I forget where it was, but there was an officer who was prosecuted for sexually assaulting a woman while she was in his care. He took her to Burger King or McDonald's or something, and there was an exchange for a sexual favor of some kind. And I think that while it's different, it's a sexual favor versus something that resulted in the death. I think the point is the same. At that time, Chauven had him detained. He was in his care, he was in his custody, and George Floyd died, and Chauvin's actions led to it. It's murder too. It's textbook.
Yeah, it's an assault. It's an assault. A felony assault that leads to murder is felony murder. That's exactly what you got here. Now, a lot of people disagree with the felony murder rule, even applied in this situation, because technically, all manslaughters and all murders are assaults, or generally assaults. So you can technically charge felony murder for everything. It can be very expansive. Let's say I shoot you, right? Boom, and kill you.
Please don't.
Well, that's felony murder, or if it's gross negligence, that could be felony murder. So I know, well, generally it's limited to what they call inherently dangerous felonies. But there's a lot of talk now about how the felony murder rule has been abused, and situations like this are just it's not, even though it is justice, it doesn't seem just. Because I know there was in California, it was crazy. There was a case in which the guy he loaned his car to his friend, and he knew his friend was going to go rob someone, so he lent his car to his friend. Goes to bed, wakes up the next morning, friend brings back car. They both get arrested. When the friend was out doing what they did, someone died by accident. It was an accidental death too. It wasn't even like they killed him. It was like somebody just got scared to death and had a heart attack, whatever. An accidental death in the commission of that crime. They charged the guy who was sleeping. He got 50 years in prison because he was an accomplice to a murder in the felony murder rule. But that's like that. That's why. But in most countries, the United States is it is the last country to actually employ this particular rule, the felony murder rule. I think it was properly applied in this case. Don't get me wrong. But there are issues with the felony murder doctrine.
Yeah, that seems excessive. It seems at worst it's like a negligence or something. It doesn't seem that's an accomplice type of action. Yeah, I see what you mean.
Well, really stupid question. And I don't want to derail here, but aren't all murders felonies?
Yes, it's called the felony murder rule. Felony meaning any underlying felony can lead to a murder. So that felony can be robbery, felony, and if someone dies, even accidentally, it's a strict liability crime. So if someone dies accidentally during the commission of a felony, the felony murder rule kicks in, and you can be charged with the murder. And that's true for, but obviously the bank robbery is the best analogy for it. But
sure.
very rare,
like how all assaults are violence.
States. Yeah, because all assaults
like how all assaults are violent crimes. Right.
All assaults are violent crimes, but all murders are essentially assaults too.
Right, sure.
So we had this question: has the ship sailed on the one juror who had on the Black Lives Matter T-shirt and appears to have lied on his questionnaire about his involvement in the protests and prior understanding and biases in this case? Has the ship sailed on that? What's going on with that?
Well, I don't know. From last I understood, well, there are two things. Number one, I don't think there's enough to remove this juror or to overturn the verdict based on what we know about this juror. I think there's a lot there, though. I think we're close to something. I would like to for it to be looked at a little harder, but I don't think we're there yet. So you have a juror who answered the questions in front of him, and he answered them in a very specific way because they asked for a specific answer. And all the questions that the answers that he said on the jury questionnaire, he answered them truthfully. There was no, he didn't lie. He didn't lie about any of those questions. So I would say that's poor questioning on the attorney doing the questioning, doing the voir dire, right? That's on them. But I do understand the Black Lives Matter. That's something that you should. Well, just because you wear a Black Lives Matter shirt doesn't even mean that you support the cause, right? But if he, I think hid his relationship, or how he really felt about it. But how do you really prove that? The guy, he said that he wore the shirt one time, but you got him twice wearing the shirt. Does that really show deception? He wore the shirt twice. How do we know he didn't wear it? He wasn't, he like wore the shirt, and we got him in a podcast in the evening, and the MLK march was in the daytime. Like nobody's answered that question. So I think at the end of the day, this juror has by opening his mouth has made an issue, right? That's what Chauven's his attorney literally put in the papers. We got a crazy juror out there. But I think the standard's going to be pretty high to overturn this jury verdict based on this one juror who wore a shirt a couple of times, and unless you show me he's paying off Black Lives Matter protesters or something like that, or something like really egregious, I don't think you really got him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Matter of fact, he never attended a Black Lives Matter rally. He never even attended that.
Sure, he could be wearing it ironically. He could be a hipster that's wearing it as a joke or something. Sure, no, I get it. And I think that's why a lot of the arguments for Chauven to be released or not prosecuted, however you want to say it, seem empty to me, because it's these kinds of little tiny. It's hard to even call them circumstantial, but it's like these tiny little thing. Like, George Floyd, he was using a counterfeit $20 bill. And if he hadn't done that, he wouldn't have gotten murdered. Well, so you're saying that if you use counterfeit money, that cops should be able to murder you? And if that's what you think, that's fine, I guess. I don't agree with you. I don't want you making the laws in this country because I don't think that summary execution is the appropriate punishment for somebody that uses counterfeit money. I don't. But maybe some people do. Maybe some people feel very strongly that counterfeit money is a great, egregious damage to their community, and that capital punishment is warranted. But my issue with a lot of the people that have these arguments is that they're based on such trivial. I don't even want to call it evidence, but trivial happenstance. I mean, because a guy wore a Black Lives Matter one time, sure. I mean, I met Mitt Romney one time because I was working a campaign event. I met him and I shook his hand. Like, does that mean I can't be a progressive because I met Mitt Romney one time? I mean, it was such a menial thing. It was part of a job I was working, and at the time I was working for a PAC, and it was a nonpartisan PAC. I mean, we met with Hillary's people too, and Obama's people. So, if we're going to dredge up every little tiny thing that somebody does in their past, what were you going to say?
Prolib, if you're on trial,
Yes.
if you're a juror now on Mitt Romney's trial, and they happen not to ask you about that, would you think that would make you an unfair juror if it came out? How would people like right now? You were on the jury, right? Mitt Romney's the defendant, and now it came out that you had pictures of you shaking his hand. How do you think people would believe you?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I don't know. It's a good question. It's a good point.
No, they wouldn't.
He's got pictures of shaking Mitt Romney's hand. He was in the bag.
Right.
You're a progressive liberal.
Exactly. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
They would think you're.
I thought you said he was guilty. Yeah, that's true.
They would say you're a deep spy. They had this guy all the way.
I'm part of the deep state. I got paid off by George Soros to be here. It's true.
Yeah.
But you know what they call that? They call that the what do they call it? They call that the appearance of impropriety. Right? It's just the appearance. Just even that particular incident. Matter of fact, you hate Mitt Romney, right? He's definitely not someone you would be risking jail time. You know what I'm saying? You're someone who's gonna evaluate the evidence. But you understand what I mean. If they found out that you're a progressive liberal,
right?
It's like, oh yeah, sure. Let's keep that guy in the jury. No, you're gone.
Right.
Get the progressive liberal guy out of here.
He's never going to be in favor of this pipeline.
It's like, God forbid, you wouldn't be on a Trump jury either, right? Donald Trump.
Ooh, no, you don't want me on that pitch.
Liberal, yeah.
They're going to come out and they'll be like, okay, here's our argument. I'm like, you're fine. No, he's guilty. Oh, I guarantee that motherfucker. Yeah, I don't need to hear anything.
I don't need to hear.
Just give me the paper right now.
Let's convict him and then have a trial, just so that we can.
Yeah, he's done. I don't care. Dude said he wanted to fuck his own daughter. Like, I'm done with it. No, goodbye.
But now you got a juror wearing a Black Lives Matter shirt that he said he only wore one time, but you see him now. You got two occurrences.
Yeah. Well, sorry, Maya's making me laugh. I'm sorry.
Let's just be fair about it. But there's nothing here. There's nothing. There's not enough legally here. But it ain't crazy to think the sentence out.
Legally, it would have to be something more substantial. Like they went to high school together. They were both on the football team together. Yeah. There's got to be some sort of. It's not just I wore a Black Lives Matter shirt, right? Exactly. And how do you not know that the shirt didn't actually say Back Lives Matter, and he's actually really in favor of chiropractors and massage therapists?
No, they got him like full. They've taken pictures of him.
No, I know. I'm just. I know.
He's full Black.
I'm just kidding.
Well, but that's the problem.
He's the cause, baby.
So there's like an infinite number of events leading up to any one event, right? So, and if you change one thing, I mean, if my sister hadn't stolen my cookie in kindergarten, I might not be here today for all that. I mean, it's the butterfly effect chaos theory. And so you end up with, so there was the female officer who meant to pull her taser, instead pulled her service weapon, fired, killed the guy as he was resisting arrest. And so they say, look, if he hadn't been resisting arrest, right, he'd still be alive, which, while true, isn't. He shouldn't have done it. He absolutely shouldn't have done it. You don't resist arrest. But that's, like you said, okay, that doesn't warrant the death penalty, and she certainly isn't empowered to.
I just want to correct one thing you said. There are times you resist arrest. But maybe in that situation wasn't one of them. The other thing is, my issue here is what that argument ignores is the gross incompetence of that officer. There is no way to mess up which side is your taser and which side is your service weapon. There's no way to mess it up. There is no way to mess it up. And my issue with all of these arguments is that they're all excuses for the police officer. And I'm sorry, Nate, but fuck cops, because they've done this shit for a long time. You're excluded. It's not you. They've done this shit for a long time, and they're like, well, it's just a few bad apples. It's just a few bad apples. But they've left the bad apples in the bunch for so long that all the apples are turning bad. And it's the one union I want to see. Got my back scratcher to get my frustration out. That's my problem with all of these situations. The situation with the 17-year-old kid, 2 nights ago? He's up all night fixing his truck, gets out of the back of his truck, puts a can of antifreeze down to keep the truck from backing into the police officer's car, and the police officer just gets out and just kills him. Just shoots him. Just shoots him dead. Why is that person... How is that not at least murder too? At the very least.
It's just like, have you ever seen the video of the 87-year-old man white guy getting gunned down by police officers? There's a video. His name is, what's his name? I forget. But he's getting out of his truck.
Remember.
Him and his wife are traveling home from I forget where they did, but it was like over the holidays. Old white guy. And police pull him over for something. He gets out, and officer guns him. Boom, 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 boom. 6 shots, hits him once, right? They found that officer to be totally justified, because unfortunately, and in some instances, I don't know, officers, there has to be room for mistakes, and
sure,
the level of mistakes, it's just hard for me because every situation is so different. And I think usually when you have these arguments, one side, expands them to a degree where, every officer does this, and it's just not accurate, right? I hate continuing to say it's more complex than that, but it's all about what the officer's trained to do. How often is the officer trained to do it? All these things are factored into what goes on in any individual situation. Like, for instance, what was the first one you mentioned? The one with the taser.
Yes.
Yeah. I honestly would think that, yes, it is extremely difficult if you put your taser always goes to your left side, gun goes on your right side, and it's there, right? You should know. It should be almost reflexive. But what most people don't know is when you get hot, boom, you may think taser because it takes you thought to think taser because that's not your dominant hand. And you may think taser and grab gun. Now, that's a mistake. That's a mistake that should not happen. That officer's got 20 years experience, but that officer's not pulling out tasers every day. These are situations that happen in a limited amount of time. And the officer pulling out that gun, screaming, taser, 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 and pulling that trigger and saying, oh my God, I got my gun. I understand that sometimes people in the public want to see that as a homicide, this is a homicide, see that as some intentional killing. But if you just look at the facts and circumstances around that case, I would honestly go with manslaughter at most, because yes, she was definitely negligent, and especially if she put that weapon on the same side. Some reports were saying that her taser and gun were actually on the same side. Now that's culpable negligence, right? Because we train you to put them on the opposite side, so that don't happen. That, boom, you got man too. You are definitely, you killed them at that point in time. But now you're talking about, well, is it a mistake or is it culpable? So I think you can make that culpable negligence. Yes, by pulling the wrong gun, but then it's like, that's a pretty high standard, because now any officer that's in that tense situation that makes that same mistake by pulling down on a dominant hand, they're committing murder. And I just don't think that's murder. I think that's a mistake. I think it's unfortunate. I think the family should get paid. I think this cop should lose her job because we don't need people to make mistakes like that and cost lives. But I don't know if it's I understand it's civil like a mother. I don't know if it's George Floyd criminal. That I'm just not sure it's criminal.
Well, now I've been trying to find your video because I tended to be much more on Ethan's side of this, but I'd seen that video. So you did a video on the 86, 87-year-old man gets out of his car. He left his cane back in the car, and he goes back to get his cane. He's defying officers' orders, but it seems like he wasn't aware. So I can't find that video. I don't know if that's been down, but that was. I thought you did a great breakdown of that. Now, I think Ethan may want to say something, but I'd like to get back to this because I think there are specific things. I want to bring up one thing that happened a while back where it was clear to me that officers. And this is something that Ethan had mentioned earlier, and I think this needs to be addressed because I want to figure out where we're going to go from here as a country. There's the defund the police movement, which I think was poorly framed and has some issues. But I'd like to talk about the training and whether they're escalating or de-escalating situations and how they proceed in situations like this, because I think we can certainly agree that's a large problem. So was there something else you wanted to say, Ethan, before we go forward? Because I want to make sure that you.
Yeah, I want to bring up one other case, real quick. Remember the young lady, the 16-year-old? The cop got out of the car and shot her within like 20 seconds. She was about to stab somebody else.
Oh,
her name flew out of my head.
Micaiah Bryant.
Thank you, Micaiah. I felt that it was the proper response with the wrong weapon. That should have been a taser. And I felt like I agree with you completely. If the woman that murdered the man in the convenience store, if she had them both on the same side, that's absolutely negligence, manslaughter, can't happen.
Yeah.
But the most important thing is cops who make these wrong decisions at these wrong times, we have to start demanding that they can't be cops anymore because it's too flipping important. Listen, we need law enforcement, okay? I'm not saying we don't need law enforcement. We absolutely need law enforcement. The problem is we don't need the wrong people in law enforcement, and we continually have these situations with people in law enforcement making decisions that they can't make, that have consequences that we can't accept, and it has to end. I'm not saying that we need to get rid of all cops, but I'm saying we have to make the cops better. That's what I want. I want to make cops better. I want to make law enforcement fair. I want to make my community safer. That's what I'm demanding.
Now, before we go into these events, right, I think we should. Now, I like to look at these from the standpoint of the constitutional standard. And the reason why is because every state has adopted this same standard. It's from a case called Graham v. Connor. If you watched any of the Derek Chauvin trial, they said that case religiously. Graham v. Connor, the Connor standard, the Graham standard. They kept interchanging the name. It was making it crazy. Like the same stupid case. Now, in this case, what happens is that just the quick recitation of the facts. In this case, there was a guy. He was having epileptic fit. I think he took too much insulin or something and needed sugar. So he asked his friend to drive him to a convenience store to get some orange juice to help him recover from his diabetic issue. So the friend drives him to the store. He pulls to the store, jumps out the car, runs into the store, but a cop is literally sitting right across from at the gas station. So the cop sees this guy run into the store. He runs around and then runs out, right? Because there was a long line in the store, and he said he didn't want to pay for the orange juice. So he runs out the store, jumps in the car, and speeds off. From the cop's perspective, it looked like the guy was it just robbed the store. Pull him over. At the end of the day, this guy's arm is broken. He's beaten, and he sues and says the cops roughed him up. But the Supreme Court sided with the police officer, saying that a reasonable officer facing the same set of circumstances without the benefit of 20/20 hindsight, what would they do? That's how you have to judge these situations. So you look at officers' training, you look at experience, and you say, what would a reasonable officer do in this particular situation. And how do you judge what a reasonable officer do? You look to their training. Are they trained to do this? What's the parameters of this training? So forth and so forth and so forth. Now, there's three things that say with any event you want to first look at to determine if it's going to be more likely that an officer is going to use force or not. The first thing is the nature of the 911 call. Going into a bank robbery with your weapons drawn is different than going to a cat in a tree, right? So the nature of the call is the first thing. The second thing is whether the suspect is resisting arrest. Obviously, if somebody's resisting arrest, you have to use force to get control of them. So resisting arrest is a separate factor. And then the last one is severity of the crime. This is the same thing from murder in progress to someone jaywalking, right? The more severe the crime, the more likely it is. And obviously, you have other factors like officer subject factors, how many officers you have versus how many subjects you have, and the level of threat. So in evaluating any police officer shooting, that's the way any state law has to resolve that. If an officer is justified under the counter standard, more likely than not, they're going to be justified under the state standard and found to be not guilty. I know I said a lot. I'm sorry.
No, you did, but it was good stuff. So, in your opinion, do you think that officer that shot Micaiah, what's your opinion on that?
First, I think the officer was 100%. I think the officer was justified, but I think the officer was justified for different reasons. First, some people say, well, why not use a taser in that situation? Well, those are people I don't believe maybe have shot in tasers. Tasers aren't as accurate as firearms because they have the things. It's
true. And you have to be a certain distance away. No, there's a bunch of stuff. Yeah.
Yes. And another thing with a taser too, they really work only half the time. You know what I'm saying? So it's something that if you have an immediate threat that you have to stop, generally you're not taking a 50-50 shot with a taser. With a gun, you're going to be more successful. You have a higher rate of ending with that. If something that's immediate in front of you needs to be ended now, do I take a 50-50 shot with a taser from distance, or do I unload a firearm? So I think that's with this officer. And on top of that, because of the immediacy of the situation, that's the reason why the taser's on your left side. Because if it's something that's happening now, you got to pull the taser up and then move it. And by that time, she's already stabbed. So that's why your dominant hand is a reactionary hand. So in that situation, generally in officers training, they train you that tasers are deadly weapons. I can show you tape after tape of DA charging people with pointing tasers at people and telling you tasers are deadly weapons, meaning you can die from a taser. I even covered cases on my channel where people have been killed with tasers. Cops have gone to jail, literally tased people to death. This is not even like a joke. One shot, boom, guy's gone. These are deadly weapons because they're deadly weapons. So with that understanding, I understand that Micaiah Bryant. Okay. I do understand that Micaiah Bryant was 6'10". I do understand that there is police violence disproportionately affects the African American community, no doubt about that, and the minority community.
Sure.
But I think in this situation, with training experience and things that I'm familiar with, this cop is essentially a hero because the victim, the person who was in the young lady in pink that was about to get stabbed, she was about to suffer serious physical injury. She could have been killed. And generally, when the cop stops that other one from getting killed, then he's a hero. But in the time and day we live in now, he's the villain. But he saved that other girl's life.
And I want to be clear. I agree with you, and I know you're not going to hear a lot of people with progressive in their monikers or whatever say that about that situation. Because for the exact reason you just brought up, he saved somebody else's life. Potentially, he probably saved the other girl's life. I mean, she was going for her neck. If she'd gotten that, whatever that instrument was, into the other girl's neck, there is a major artery right here. If that had gotten sliced, there's no, she could have died. So the cop potentially saved a life by taking one. And I think that he made the right decision. He had very little time to decide. He made a reactionary decision. I do wish that he'd been able to use his taser. I understand why he didn't. I do. I get it. I just wish I wish the whole situation hadn't happened because it sucks. and I wish Micaiah was still with us some way today. But I think, yes, and Bregman brings up a point. She was the one originally being assaulted in front of her home, and she was the one who called the cops. Yes, I understand all of that. But in the moment, there's plenty of times where somebody has turned a situation around and they've been a person who was being assaulted and they turned around into assaulting somebody else. It's happened probably millions of times throughout human history, right?
Well,
You can
hold on, no. And this is the reason why hindsight or 2020 is not allowed to be even considered within the evaluation. She's the one that called
Sure.
the cops. She was the one that was in the fight. The cop didn't know any of that when he jumped at that car, because we can play the full tape. When the cop jumps out the car, he's like, "Hey, what's going on? What's going on?" And he sees one girl pulling back a knife on another girl. Right. He's like, nobody. She's
Right.
like, she's screaming, "I called you!" No, she just got a knife and bearing down on the poor girl's neck. So
Right.
I understand people want to add these facts post hoc, but you got to, we can play again. We can play the video. The cop gets out the car and says, "What's going on?" And all hell breaks loose. That it's not like he knew that this was the one that called 911. Matter of fact, if you're being reasonable, you would say, well, that's probably not the one that was calling, because she's stabbing the other girl with a knife, right?
And that's the point that I want to bring up, is that people like me who want to see drastic law enforcement reform are guilty just as much as people who are saying, well, then, George Floyd shouldn't have been using a counterfeit bill, or whatever other excuse the people who want to defend police are doing, because it's all, like you said, it's all hindsight. It's all bringing it up later, trying to justify what happened. You can't do that. You can't do that on either side. You have to look at the situation as it was presented and make a decision about it. And the difference between Derek Chauvin and the other cases, and that case, and the case of the woman with the taser gun mix-up, is you have a very heated situation and a cop makes a split-second decision and someone dies. It's very, very different than what Derek Chauvin did, where he kneeled on George Floyd's neck.
Yeah.
It's I think that's the point that I wanted to bring up, is that there is such a firestorm on my side, the left side and the extreme left side, against all law enforcement. And, I'm trying to do my best to take a breath and make sure that we're going after the right ones, because we need to go after Derek Chauvin. The guy that murdered the 17-year-old last night, or 2 nights ago, whenever it was, in Pennsylvania, we probably need to go after him. That one does not look good. But we can't jumble them all up if we really want true change. Because if we bring all of them up to the same level and we turn up the volume to 11 on every single one, no one's going to listen to us. And we got to fight the right battles and die in the right hills. That was the point I was trying to get to.
Well, but no, exact. I think I agree with everything that you're saying. What I think sometimes that we forget is that each one of these cases are generally unique, and most people will agree with the outcome of the cases if they understood both the law and what the facts were surrounding them. And that's kind of what I try to do. I just try to say, well, here are the facts, and here's how these things are judged. Now, even though, I'm going to say it, I've been scoring 1,000 on these things, because you can always see the outcome of these cases just based on just the simple facts. And it's funny because I don't really think of it as being progressive or conservative. I just think sometimes it's just a lack of education, because both sides do it. When it comes to Ashley Babbitt, who was jumping through a barricaded window, and police got guns out screaming, "Stop, don't do it, stop, don't jump in." And she, she called, right? She thought they were bluffing. She called, "I called," bam. She's a goner, right? They say that was not justified, but then they'll say something like George Floyd died. So, it should be, if you look at the facts of a case, and you can honestly say, no matter what the person looks like, no matter who the person is, this is the outcome based on the law and the facts, then I've done my job.
All right. Well, so
I do. That's why I still watch your stuff.
So I wanted to bring up one, and this is I'm hoping this is going to be a good segue into what we're what maybe some of the fundamentals of the problems are. And I do want to bring up a point just to I haven't. What would have been wise is before the show is to look up approximately how many incidents like this we have versus how many arrests or stops are made, because I think it's very easy to see the bad ones, and we still don't necessarily have a good handle on fixing the problem. I think again, as Ethan had said earlier, more training and you're never going to pull out some of the human instincts, which is, I think, what went wrong on the video that we're about to show you. But I think, obviously, what we're about to show, so many places where it could have been prevented very easily. It's the arrest of a 17-year-old kid, Devin Guilford. He was on his way to his girlfriend's house. And so we're not going to show the full clip. We've shown it before, but I think that's not what this today's show is for. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show the first few minutes of the clip. The officer was coming the other way, and the kid flashed his lights at the officer. So the officer turned around and pulled him over. And let's this is the body cam.
Hello. How you doing? Hey, it's driver's license, registration, proof of insurance, please. Pulled you over today because you flashed me. I didn't even have my brights on.
Yes, you did, sir.
Nope, I didn't, partner.
Sir.
I'm telling you, because when I turned around,
I couldn't see. I could not see.
I didn't have them on, all right?
Dude, trust me. I know.
Trust me, okay? I did not have them on. When I turned around, I flashed them on to show you that they weren't on.
Well, you turned them off when you came around.
No, I didn't. Driver's license, registration. Driver's license, registration, proof of insurance, please. I did not have them on. Driver's license, registration, proof of insurance, please.
I don't even know you're an officer. 3 forms of identity.
Driver's license, registration, proof of insurance, please. You've been pulled over. My name is Sergeant Frost. My name is Sergeant Frost, Lee County Sheriff's Office.
That's your badge number?
You cannot see my badge number. $23.72. Start me another car, please.
I am video and audio recording for my safety and your safety.
That is absolutely fine, so am I.
You just told me that I could not have your badge number. That's
My
against
badge
the law,
number?
sir.
No. You asked me to show it to you.
Yes, and you said no.
My badge
You
number?
told me no. Is that correct?
No, it's not.
It is correct, sir.
You have two
Am I
choices
being
at this
detained?
place. I'm giving you the option.
Am I being detained?
Yes, you are.
For what crime?
You flashed me with your high beams.
You had your lights on, sir. I swear to God, you had your lights on.
This is your option right now. You right now are refusing to give me your ID.
I have not committed a
Refusing
crime.
to give me your ID in a traffic stop is a misdemeanor. Right now you're committing a misdemeanor. You have two choices. You can get with the program and start to comply with this traffic stop, or you're going to be taken to jail. Those are your two choices. Driver's license, registration, and proof of insurance, please.
I do not have my license, sir. I am going to get it.
You don't have your driver's license?
I do not have it
Why is that?
because I just drove my brother to the church.
You do not have your driver's license on your person, correct?
Yes, I do.
Where is it?
You do not have to see it.
I do have to see it.
Why do you have to see it? You had your brakes. I cannot see. I was gonna crash. I cannot see. You had your brakes on, sir. I'm not lying to you. I was just doing that to be polite. I didn't want you to flash someone and have someone go off the road and crash. You know?
Do you realize that if you had complied with this traffic stop, it would have gone a whole different way for you?
Yes,
Do you
I do.
realize that?
Yes.
Do you realize that I would have explained to you that I'm driving a brand new vehicle tonight? I have been
Yes.
flashed a couple times because these headlights are new. I've stopped a couple vehicles tonight. No people have gotten citations. But those headlights are brand new. They're brighter on that vehicle than they are in
They're
normal cars.
super bright. You need to get new ones.
But my high beams were not on. That's what I would have come and explained to you.
Oh, I'm
Okay?
sorry.
But now, I need your driver's license, registration, and proof of insurance, please.
The kids' camera's on the left.
Where's your driver's license? Now.
I do not have to give you that.
Central 2372, start me another car. Priority. You do have to give me your driver's license.
2372 is requested.
No.
Get out of the car. Get out of the car. I'm telling you right now.
No. Hey!
You're going to get tased.
Do not touch me, officer! Do not touch me. You cannot open my car.
Get out of the car. Now, out of the car. Out of the car, you're going to get tased.
He says...
Out of the car or you're going to get tased. Everything's being recorded, son. I got no problem with that. Get out of the car.
Yes.
Get down on the ground now. Down on the ground now. Down on the ground. Right here, facing me. Down on the ground now.
What do you mean?
Get on your belly right now.
This is what American...
Put your phone down and put your arms out to your side now. Arms out to the side.
Are you all... I don't have a weapon.
Hey! Get your...
You can't
Son,
do that!
get your hands behind your back. You're under arrest.
You can't do that!
Get your hands behind your back.
Officer, what are you doing?
Get your hands behind your back. You're under...
Officer! Ow!
All right. He tases the kid. Kid gets up, runs. He fires 7 times, hits the kid with all 7 shots, and kills him. His name was Devin Guilford. The officer was, oh dear Lord, I forget whether he went to trial and was acquitted or whether or not they did not even end up going to trial. But he was the department investigated and he was not disciplined for this. So
my recollection is that they said he didn't do anything wrong.
I'd have to see the rest of this tape then, because up until this point, I haven't seen the officer do anything wrong. So maybe the wrongness has got to come after this point.
well.
I can describe the rest of it to you real quick because it's real shaky. It's hard to see. But you can see the kid kind of like this a little bit. Officer says the kid was striking him in the face a couple of times. You see the cop afterwards. His face is bloodied. I mean, the kid connected with a couple of hits, and the cop shot him.
Well, I think in terms of how officers are trained today and the expectations, I think he was very polite when it started. I think obviously the kid was being belligerent. He was a punk. He sort of felt he knew better, and he was going to tell the officer what. So I don't think you should start trouble with officers, because if something goes wrong anyway, I think it's just a bad idea. But I do think that the officer.
Hold on.
Yes.
But I'll say this, though. This officer, there were some bad tactics used here by this officer. The first bad tactic is now waiting for backup before engaging this kid, right on a one-on-one. Obviously, you're talking about a kid. He sounds like he may be inebriated at this particular point on. You've already got a priority call in for backup, right? Let backup show up. Except now we're fighting on a 2-to-1 instead of a one-on-one, right? Mm-hmm. So obviously, this officer, there could have been things that I don't know what the immediacy was. We got to pull him out the car right now. You know what I'm saying? Was the car still on? Seeing the car was off. And he still had to wrestle with them. And even with the kid complying, laying down, you could just have him lay there until backup comes. You know what I'm saying? Let's wrestle him with 2. So I don't know. I think this officer used a lot of bad tactics, and bad tactics, unfortunately, sometimes lead to these use of forces.
Well, and so
yeah, and he said to the kid that he pulled over a couple of people who'd flashed him. I mean, so obviously this was something he'd been doing all night. People flashed him. He pulled them over and said, "Don't flash me. My brights aren't on." Well, then who cares? What? No, why is that a reason to stop somebody?
It's what's it called? It's like I don't want to call it a speed trap. It's one of those things where you're stopping everybody randomly to see just if they have their papers, if they have this or that. I mean, so that's what it's almost like a checkpoint. It's like a
stop
randomized
and frisk,
checkpoint.
but with a car.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's a randomized checkpoint. That's all it is.
So the two objections I have, and neither are that I'm aware of in violation of any police procedure, but the 2 objections that I have, first of all, was when the kid said, "I'd like to see your badge number," and as was explained later, he's actually not allowed to show him the badge or the badge number. He is required, if asked, to give that information, and so that's what the officer was discussing. But he's splitting hairs at that point, and it almost seems like he's kind of trying to cause trouble. He's like, "No, I'm not going to show you my badge." He knows what the kid is asking. In fact, when the kid later says, "Well, gee, I asked for your number and you wouldn't give it to me," No, you asked to see it, and I would. Okay, there's nobody watching who doesn't know what the kid meant, and the officer did not have to handle it that way. Now, you can do that a million times and nothing goes south, but I still think that was an escalation that didn't need to happen. I think the other one that troubled me the most was when he said, it didn't have to go this way for you. You can tell mentally he's gearing up. I'm about to engage with this kid, and I want him to know it's his fault. And that for me was highly problematic, again, for people who are armed. Any thoughts?
Well, and the other issue to me is like, what's the worst thing that could have happened if he'd waited for backup? The kid could have gotten away, like drove away. So, I mean, at that point he had his license or his license plate. I mean, so what if the kid drove away?
If the kid runs away, if he runs away.
Yeah.
Oh, you said if he drove away. Yeah. At that point
Drove away, runs away, either way.
You know what we meant. Oh, Jesus, these cops.
I mean, you'll find them later. Like that's my issue. Is it seems to me that in a lot of these arguments too, they're like, well, they tried to run away, they tried to get away. So, yeah, they tried to get away because they don't want to get caught. That's a perfectly normal human reaction, and no one deserves to die for that.
Well, but again, I think everything was with some perspective, though. You know what I'm saying? Do you want to, somebody who just committed an atrocious crime and you're trying to catch them? I don't know. It's you do chase people.
Sure, I mean at a traffic stop as well. Right.
Yeah, I'm thinking these people, and right now you got a guy who's not giving up your license, not giving up this. This is screaming that this guy could have a record. He could have warrants or something like this. Why the secrecy,
Sure.
Am I letting Jack the Ripper
could have drugs. Sure.
Me? You know what I'm saying? Yeah, so,
right,
just
sure.
having a license
I get
plate
that.
number, the car, we already have trouble. The car may be stolen. Oh, yeah, I just let a stolen car go,
Sure.
Let him go. You let Jack the Ripper go. But I think the officer got him out the car, which is true. You want to get him away from his the vehicle, the motor transportation, and you have him outside, you have him down and waiting for backup. It's now two people who now it's going to be harder to justify shooting a kid 7 times. You got two people there, right? Over one kid. That's what I'm talking about. I think this was poor tactics, and the kid's death is tragic, but I would definitely need to have to see. I got to go back and maybe watch this because I need to see the second part of the video because 7 shots in the back just don't seem justified in a situation like this. I just don't see it. But,
rarely would 7 shots be just 7 times. Think about that. He didn't just shoot him in the leg to try to get him to stop. He unloaded 7 gunshots into another human being. That's serious. That's like fight or flight.
He was clearly a kid. I mean, you could tell. You see a picture of him. He's not one of those 17-year-olds that's mistaken for 35.
Right? No. I mean, he was a child. He was a high school child, obviously. So just the amount of
did he punch the cop up too in the face and all that?
It appears he hit him at least twice. There was a scuffle, whether it was deliberate or not, but it appears
there's a picture of him with blood on his face. I mean, the kid connected with him somehow. Yeah. Again, it's just it's hard to see in the video because they're scuffling.
All right, no, because it seems like at one end I'm like this guy's like 14, and the other is like he's busted up his nose. So when you say child, what is it, like 17-year-old, 18-year-old? How 17-year-old kid?
Yeah,
right?
High school is what I mean. Right, sure.
All right.
There was a high school kid
because
yeah.
Well, I'm saying
please
go ahead, Nick. I think we're lagging on each other. Go ahead.
Yeah, we are. I don't know why the V call's lagging tonight, but I've completely spaced what I was going to say. So please, after you.
No, I think you guys are definitely. I do agree with you guys' point. I think you're correct. I think though, it's just I got to see the rest of this because I can't see 7 shots in the back. I just can't see it. I don't know unless this guy is a terrorist with a bomb about to run into a school or something. With an AR-15.
Right. And
I don't see it happening.
Yeah. And against my point is when I was saying that he was a child, somebody that the cop could physically overpower is what I mean. Like, he wasn't trying to stop the situation. He was trying to kill this person. You don't unload 7 gunshots into another human being hoping to stop them from doing something. You unload 7 gunshots into another human being trying to kill them. There's no other explanation. You don't shoot them 7 times and say, "Oh wait, okay, stop, please." You're trying to take their life away, and he did take the kid's life away.
Yeah. Well, the standard is, was this child, was he a serious physical threat to this officer or someone else? It doesn't have to be a deadly physical, but because you're trying to apply deadly physical force. So the facts and circumstances have to show that this kid did something that made him a serious enough threat to the officer. Generally, punching someone is not enough. Taser, yes. Knife, yes. But generally, just punching someone and roughing someone up is not enough, especially 7 shots in the back. That's why I'm always someone who's unarmed. That's why you have tasers. That's why you have batons. It's keep gravitating. It's just, and to say it's then justified, it just makes no sense. I see an unarmed man,
right?
Punch a cop a couple of times and get 7 shots in the back. That's the part that's misleading to me. That's the part I just don't understand.
And that it's an adult versus a kid, because it's somebody that he could reasonably physically overpower. That's what gives me pause here.
This cop must. But you saw that cop; he was getting his ass whipped by that kid. That kid was roughing him up a little bit. You guys even said it was right. That kid was roughing him up, right? He was getting his ass kicked by the 17-year-old. The 17-year-old was running roughshod.
Yeah. Well, so let me ask you guys 2 questions. I want to ask a very specific question we had in the live chat for Nathan. I'd like to know the answer to, and then I'd like to ask. Okay, so we've talked about sort of what we see as some of these problems. I think we all sort of, Zandriga said this once, and I like this, which was actually there's very common agreement, even between conservatives and liberals, as to what the problems are. Very few people actually disagree about the problems. The questions is, how do we solve it? What tools do we use to solve it? So what do we do to solve problems like this, problems like Chauven, problems where officers appear to be not taking the problems where officers appear not to be taking human life into consideration, whether it's because they're just cavalier that way or because of underlying racism. So I would like to get to that, but the first question, I thought this was very interesting. Mr. Brody, have you were a police officer in New York? Were you ever injured? Oh, and I forgot, I have 2 super chats, so let's ask this question, then we'll get to the super chats. Were you ever injured in the line of duty? That comes from Titan.
Well, 2 things. I didn't work for the NYPD, so I wasn't an NYPD officer. But I was in law enforcement, and I broke my arm because I made our bike patrol unit. So I broke my arm one time, which was fun. And I got a lot of paper cuts when I was at the DA's office because we were pushing so much paper. But that's about the only 2 things. So, on my law enforcement career, yeah, I broke my arm once and actually almost broke my leg at the DA's office, but that was playing in our DA basketball tournament. Because what happens is the DA's office is so big, they have their internal basketball league. So all the people who work for the DA's office, we go and we have a basketball league. So my team won the championship that year, but I happened to break my leg. So
and I do want to ask at some point. I mean, I have some questions. I saw the interview you did with Shannon Q a while back, and I thought she asked a lot of good questions. And I'd love to know a little bit more about your experiences working there. But I do want to move forward. So, Sinister Porpoise, $2 super chat. Thank you, Sinister, very much for that super chat. $2. And she says that she confuses her left and right sides a lot. No sinister reasoning behind it. She just confuses them. And is Andering super chat $5. Hey, this topic sounds familiar. Great show so far. Thank you, Andrew, very much for your support. We appreciate all the people who super chat. Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it. Again, we get to.
And I think it's important to note real quick that Sinister Porpoise is a Linux user, and I think that might contribute to her issues with knowing her left from her right. She's willing to use Linux.
You are an anti-Linux, right? Is that
I'm anti-Sinister Porpoise.
I mean, just well, Sinister Porpoise is a solipsist, so you just attacked everybody in my live chat. But we'll discuss that later. So thank you guys very much. So does someone want to give me sort of a rundown as to what they think the problem is that sort of led to the Chauven killing, and where we go from here, and if it's even possible? I mean, what it seems to me that this is something that you need to have a lot of political will for, and there's some, but.
Well, I want to go first this time because I have a question for Nate real quick. Nate, do you know who Randall Kennedy is?
No.
Okay. Randall Kennedy is a professor at Harvard, law professor. He's one of those dirty critical race theory people. African-American guy, and one of the books he wrote is, the title of it is The N-Word. Not the N-Word, but literally the N-Word. It's a study of the etymology of how that word became such a horrible, egregious word. One of the books I read in college when we were studying critical race theory. And there's this case of this taxi driver. A lot of the book is old court cases. It was in the late 40s, early 50s, something like that. And this taxi driver is leaving for his shift, and his boss is in the other room and refers to him as the N-word to another coworker. So something, I wish that guy didn't work here. And he sued for discrimination, and the judge found that he shouldn't feel discriminated against because it wasn't directed at him. It was directed about him, but to somebody else. He just happened to overhear the conversation.
Oh.
By the way, that wouldn't hold up today. Don't worry, that wouldn't hold up in court today, but it did at the time. But the fact that there was a time so relatively recent that it did is how we got to where we are today. Because there has been, yes, slavery, but let's go after slavery. Let's go to 1957. The Dred Scott decision said, the Supreme Court said that black people don't have the same rights as white people. That was 1857. It happened. It was Dred Scott. It led to Jim Crow. It is a pivotal moment in American history, and it fucking happened. And we can go into all the other stuff. Go ahead.
The timeline's a little off. Dred Scott led to the 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment was direct overturning of Dred Scott.
Yes. I'm sorry. Yes, my bad. But Reconstruction then led into Jim Crow, was my point. So when you have things that are justified, like separate but equal mandates that say that there are legitimate reasons why you need water fountains for different people based on the color of their skin, that say that it's okay if African-American children attend schools that are more run down or that don't have new books to read, whatever, because they don't learn the same way that white people learn. You end up with a situation that you have today because there are people who grew up in communities that believed those sorts of regulations, laws, however you want to codify them, were the right way to live. And when they hear the cornerstone speech that Confederate Vice President Alexander Stephens gave during the Confederacy, where he said that the Confederate government was the first of its kind based upon the fact that black people were not equal to white people. It's a quote. I'm not paraphrasing. That's literally in the damn speech he gave. They lost the war, but those people and their mindset didn't go away. And there are people today that still believe that all of that is true and that it's justified and that it's real. And how do you fix it? Slowly. And that's why MLK said that the arc of justice was, the arc of the universe was long, but it curved towards justice because he knew that the wheels on this just don't turn fast. If YouTube had been around in the 1940s and 50s, Nate probably wouldn't be on here with us. And that saddens me, but it's absolutely damn true. And that was only 70 years ago. I think it is changing, and I think things are getting better. They aren't great, and I wouldn't even say that they're good, but they're better. And I think we just have to keep trying to get to the point where they're good, and then someday they'll get great.
So, Nate, what are your thoughts? I think you're muted.
You're muted.
For the first time, ladies and gentlemen, in time history, the first person to mute themselves was not me.
You're contagious.
Yeah. I've been called that more than once, unfortunately, but dear Lord. All right. So you were saying that.
No, I find myself agreeing with Progressive Liberal about the history of this whole thing, right? Because I've read most of the horror cases, like when, for instance, in Georgia, when it was, illegal to be black, it's technically illegal to be black. Now, this is after Reconstruction and the black codes came in. So, for instance, if you were black and unemployed, they could arrest you and give you a life sentence. And where do they send you? They send you to plantation to do out your sentence. And actually, there's an interesting case that just recently happened where a guy stole some hedge clippers, and they still had some of those what they call pig laws in effect, where for petty crimes that black people commit, you get life sentences. And guess where all the prisons were? They were on plantations, right? So that was kind of the system in the Old South, and that was kind of the criminalization of the black man. I think a lot of people don't understand that. Is the exception to the 13th Amendment that makes legal slavery was essentially making them criminals. If you made them criminals, you can then use their labor. That's the exception in the 13th Amendment, and that's obviously been documented. The criminalization of the black community. Now, 98% of all black people in the United States at that time lived in what's known as the Black Belt. The Black Belt is that strip of land from between like Georgia, all those southern states, and that's the farmland. That's where the cotton grows. That's where the wheat grows. That's where the corn grows. So it's a really fertile place. And it was right there from the transatlantic trade. You just import black people right over from Africa, right onto the fertile land, and then they tended it. So 98% of the black population was there. I understand that this country has been horrible to black people from everything till for medical experiments like Tuskegee, for instance. These have been a horrifying thing. But I also think that today things are different, right? Today, if I go to a job and someone calls me a nigga, he just made me a millionaire. It all depends on who he's working with, right?
That's true.
I go on to Sony, he says, "You a nigga? I'm a millionaire. Thank you." I'm saying thank you to the guy, because I got a claim, right? So we going from you can't say it at all, and then if you say it once, your ass is fired. You're in trouble, but you got problems, and if you can't say it in the workplace no more, right? It's one of those type of things. Yep. Also, I'll also say this. I think in the structure of the laws and the way the structure of what we have has been built on not really the criminalization of the system, but of the black man. And a lot of these laws, like the pig laws, for instance, I was talking to you, they were specifically put in place to more or less imprison this population. And some of those laws are still on the books today and are still being enforced. It's still being enforced. Something like they said in Louisiana, for something like 90% of the people who are subject to these pig laws happen to be black. So they're well designed and they are doing exactly what they're supposed to do. But I also think there's a recognition that if you're black in America, well, guess what? Guess where you happen to be living? You happen to be living at the best time ever on the planet for a black person living in America. Today, right? Today is I wouldn't want to go back to the 50s and 60s. You made the compelling argument. But today, as a black man, I'm living in the best America ever for a black man. Somebody may call me nigga, but then when I step out the door, he better not say it while he's working. This is the best possible time to be a black man in America. But
okay, so
still got
issues. Real quick.
But we still got two issues.
Well, quick.
And we have a criminal justice issue,
there's one,
and we have a poverty issue.
Yes. Okay. That's what I was going to bring up was we still have those poverty issues. Right.
Yeah. So now first I want to talk about the criminal justice issue. Now, the criminal justice issue comes from obviously like here in New York, right? They found that whites and blacks use marijuana at the same rates. And then and actually, white people actually use it more than black people, which is kind of shocking. But if you were black, you were 8 times more likely to get arrested for having it than white people. Matter of fact, the numbers were so off the charts that they actually stopped the program. They're like, we can't even enforce this anymore. We just arrested all the black people. Even though we know 80% of the black people we arrest happen to be using it, but we know half the users are actually white. So it was just totally way off. But it's a mentality, I think. It's a mentality based on from all the way back from that, because don't forget a lot of the, like, I remember when I was teaching a class on, I was teaching a pre-law class, and we were talking about just the history of American law and especially criminal law. And we were talking about some of these black codes and just reading through them. There was one where if you were black and you had a dirty house, they could arrest you for a felony dirty house.
Oh my.
If you were black and out during the daytime, you could be stopped and you could be arrested and questioned whether you had a job or not. Matter of fact,
if a black man shook a white woman's hand, they could be arrested in Arkansas.
Listen, it was, the laws were so crazy because, and think about this, they were so crazy that people who were actually had finished prison sentences would come out of prison, and the sheriff would wait for them, because he knows when people are coming out of prison. He'd wait that day. People come out of prison, which is coming from the plantation, come out in front. They would arrest them all. Do you guys have jobs? No, we just got out of prison. You're black and unemployed. Arrest them back and take them right back into the goddamn plantation. That's how sick it was. That's how sick it was. But I'll say today the issues are different. And I think today our system has come from a system of that. Now we have to start looking at the analytics. Why is it that black people are pulled over more than white people, even adjusting for socioeconomic status, right? Even when you adjust for socioeconomic status, you still have the same issue. So it's not just about class, right? A lot of people want to make it seem like it's about class, right? Blacks are more in poverty. Blacks are higher to have police contacts because, the more contacts, the more risk of violence, where, upper middle class whites, you won't. But even in that neighborhood, blacks are still pulled over more than whites at crazy rates, right? So
yep.
Adjusting for socioeconomic status, you still have this problem. And I think that problem comes from now a mindset. And it's not a mindset of a white officer. It's a white officers in general. I'll say this. When I remember I was doing store security at, I think, was it Banana Republic or something like that? I was from one of the Gap stores, and I was there in-house security first. I think I was in-house security for them. And we had, there was a team, and this team would come into the store, and it would have a well-dressed white guy come into the store. And then a whole bunch of black kids would come in. And the black kids would go looking around. So then, all security is scurrying around looking at the black kids. What are they doing? What are they touching? What are they touching? And when these people left, we had lost so much stuff. We were like, how do we know? Weren't you guys watching them? They didn't take anything. They touched everything, but they didn't take anything. They did it like 2 or 3 more times. Eventually, we had loss prevention come in. They checked the tapes. Guess what happened? While everybody's chasing these black kids around, it's the white guys, well-dressed. They put in we got $1,000 jackets. They throwing them in bags like they going out of style and walking out the front door because we're so focused on, but that is because of perception. They played off our perception. Even us being, and most of the store security was black. They're paying on for our misconceptions. We see young black kids, we see troublemakers, we see problem solvers. They need attention, and didn't really see the real threat. So that's why I don't think it's a problem. I think now it's a problem of this decriminalization of the black man. When you see something happen on TV, it's not always a black guy. It's not always this. And I think, and taking it down a notch, I hate saying it, but restore the our PR, because our PR, when you see a black person walking down the street, people are still have that feeling that something's wrong. It happens even till today, and I think that bias is what law enforcement is pushing out. That inherent bias in everybody, in all of us. That's what law enforcement is reflecting. And until we fix that, then I think you're still going to have this problem. Because again, like even New York, we're under the most progressive mayor we ever had, and blacks are still arrested. As a matter of fact, his family, right? His son is black, and blacks are still being arrested more, at a higher clip than whites. I may have made
No, it did. The movie A Time to Kill with Matthew McConaughey, 1996. For those who don't know, Matthew McConaughey plays a lawyer. He's defending Sam Jackson, who murdered these two white men who raped his 10-year-old daughter. And the pivotal scene is Matthew McConaughey describing what happened to the girl. And he keeps calling her the girl, and the girl does this, and the girl does that. And, you know, the girl's in the park, and they do this to her, and they do that to her. And, you know, they hurt her this way, and they hurt her that way. And then he says, now imagine that she's black, because he never said that she was black. And everybody reacts in the room because when he's just calling her the girl, they're all thinking of a white girl.
I think it may go on the other way around. They were thinking a black girl, and he hadn't said anything, and so he was talking to a white jury, and then he said, "Now imagine she's
at
white."
the end he says the white girl.
Now imagine she's white.
Yes, I'm sorry. Right, I said that backwards. My bad. But how do you change that? You can't change that passively. You have to change that actively. You have to actively want to change that. You have to actively, as a person, make a decision that I'm going to think in a different way, and there are too many people who don't want to. Make America Great Again was about going backwards. It wasn't about going forwards. It was about going back to a time that was better than today, because today is not that great. If you compare it to the old days, if you're the person who had things better for them back then, right? But what about the people back then that didn't have things as great? What happens to them?
Listen,
and so I don't.
Usually, make America
there's no
great
easy
again
answer.
means the 50s, but make America
Yeah. Oh,
great
sure.
again usually means
Absolutely.
the 50s. The pinnacle of American might on the planet. We were the only ones that had the bomb, and we was kicking ass and taking names. But today, though, I think America is in that same spot. Right? We're the only superpower left on the planet. You know, when we piss, people listen. And that's, you know, it's the way America's done. And this notion that it was better in the 50s, I think it's pretty fucking great now. I wouldn't want to go back to live in the 50s. You know, maybe in the 80s, if you ask me that, I want to go back. But not right now. No, with no internet. No, none of this, you know?
The internet's the first one. The internet's the first one. There's no internet. I completely agree.
I love my iPhone.
No internet, no phone.
Please don't take it from me.
The TV? Yeah, come on. Out of your mind? You go back to the 50s.
Exactly.
All right.
But yeah, I think that's the answer to your question, is the way that you change it is if you want to, and if you don't want to, you're not going to. So,
well, I think there's an attitude for many people that if there's gonna be change, they have to give something up, and that may or may not be true. I think it depends on how you look at it, but I think we gain far more than we lose if we give up anything. We gain far more than we lose. But you know, if the cops aren't going after black people, then maybe they're going to go after me. So I'm not going to, you know, why?
Well, you know what?
Let's just have less cops and more community assistance.
Yeah, see, I think that's the problem. And I think if you really want to just go right into the root cause of the problem, you know, crime and poverty trace each other like cats and dogs, right? The correlation is undeniable, right? The more impoverished our society is, the more crime, right? Especially crimes of opportunity and property crimes, unfortunately. And I think
why was George Floyd being
set up?
Wait, real quick. Why was George Floyd being arrested? Do you remember?
For a poverty crime.
Passing fake 100 bills.
Fake $20 bill.
Or fake 20s, yeah.
Fake $20 bill.
Why was he using fake $20 bills? Because the man was poor. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. And I'm assuming that that when you come to the realization that if you just look at the black household, like, you know, black household wealth compared to white household wealth, I think the whites are like almost at 300,000, or blacks are like 12 or 15,000. It's like some ridiculous number. You know, it's hard to then justify, I think, building the prison industrial complex, right, and not putting that money back into those communities, because those communities were economically depressed on purpose by government action. So I would say that you'd want to then invest in those communities to get them back to where they're equal to the community. You know, you have two communities, one that you propped up and one that you divested from. And now you're at the point where now you got money. Now you're going to say, well, we're going to treat them both equally. No. You've already taken all the money out of this one. You got to put this one so they're both equal, and then you can do whatever you want. You know what I'm saying? So I think that conversation needs to be had, because there's no way that you can just say black people can pull themselves out of the books. They have no money, no property. It's just like right after slavery ended, I think the government freed the slaves, but they didn't free their pockets, right? They were slaves, but now they were homeless. They had no money. They had to, a lot of them had to sign contracts to be slaves again, so they can just have a place to live and have something to and have a pot to slip piss in, you know, and something to eat. They were going to starve to death. They signed over their freedom as soon as they got it. Yeah, we want to be slaves again, so we can eat. So that's the reality. It's slavery is gone, right? So slavery is gone, but that financial burden that we still are going through, I think that's a key point that a lot of people fail to realize. Because again, if we're talking about poverty, we're talking about crime, and we're talking about higher rates of crime. But that still doesn't justify, because like I was saying earlier, that disproportionate effect of how black people are treated in the criminal justice system, it goes through. It just doesn't stop at the poverty level. Even if you're affluent white, that's why you hear LeBron James talking about, I was pulled over by the cops. That's why the only senator and the black senator in the U.S. Senate, he was pulled over by the cops, right? It disproportionately affects people of color than white people. And that's something that I think we have to discuss. But I also think the poverty issue was one issue to that also colors this thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And we also need more minority representation within our legislatures. But go ahead. You were going to say something, Nick. I'm sorry.
We now have Joe SirusMind joining us. Joe, good to see you.
Hi, Joe.
And then Nate cut out, and I'm not sure how or I'm pretty sure that wasn't my fault. But Joe, welcome. I'm thrilled you're here, and I'm thrilled you're here at this time because it's just. We had our first show where I was not the first one to self-mute, and now I'm not the latest one on the stream. So there has been 2 record-breaking events on this stream. So it's been how are you, Joe?
Really glad I could be here for those.
Yeah,
great.
Yeah, I'm all right. Just to Nate's point, it's just something I've been talking about a lot for a while now, and particularly of late. Just as someone who, I'm doing better than average financially, and I still get problems. I still have, I've told people recently, about 2 years ago when I bought my current car, I'm pulling up to a light behind a cop, and I give him, respectable amount of space, but not creepy amount of space. And when the light changes, he gets to the right lane, drops back behind me and follows me, and I switch to the right lane. He gets behind me. And he was about to pull me over, and I know this for a fact because I put my signal on. I was going to turn into McDonald's. He put his signal on. I went past the McDonald's and turned the corner because I happened to remember where I was at. I was basically on the border of this town and the next. He stopped in the middle of the intersection, trying to decide if he could get to me before I crossed the town line. And I'm test driving a car. It was a used car, but it's in good condition, and it's a fairly expensive car if you buy it new. But yet he was still going to try to see what I was up to for no particular reason. I wasn't breaking any laws, and I wasn't speeding or doing anything else. But I get this all the time. The thing is, what Nate said about poverty. The other thing about it is. It's not just the poverty, it's also why the poverty exists, because of bias elsewhere in society. We have bias in hiring, bias in housing and banking, plus the criminal justice system. And we know this has denied, black people especially, through generational wealth. So that has helped create the problem, and it's kind of self-fulfilling. I was having a discussion with a friend this past week, and he was pointing to he's kind of leans to the right, and he was talking about the crime statistics. And I pointed out, the reason why we're overrepresented in prison, for instance, for drug crimes, is that even though we take drugs about the same rate as white people, we're policed more, we're arrested more, we're charged more, we're denied bail more, we're convicted more, we're sentenced for longer, and denied parole more often. So one doesn't have to be, a genius to figure that out. If we're being, in engineering, we call that residence time. I'm a chemical engineer. We call that residence time, where you determine how long a particle remains in a system based on, how the rate of stuff going in, the rate of stuff going out, and a few other factors. Well, it is very easy to see. That's why we're represented about 3 times our numbers in the population in prison. for all those reasons. And of course, then it's self-fulfilling, because then people who want to make excuses for why things are the way they all say, well, see, black people are 40% of the prison population. They're represented 3 times. It's self-fulfilling. The other thing too, to Nate, what Nate said about slavery, the prison system is another form of slavery, because we know that prisoners work for basically nothing for for-profit companies. And that was one little hole in the 13th Amendment, is that, well, you can't be compelled to work for no pay unless you're incarcerated for a crime, which is actually what led to the black codes and a whole bunch of other Jim Crow laws over about 100 years. Was a way to basically bring slavery back under another auspices.
Legally, to do an end run again around the 13th Amendment. So I do want to wrap it up. I think it's been a great stream, and I appreciate everyone coming. But I want to start to. So I'm thrilled you came in, even if it's just for the last few minutes. So we've asked everybody so far how they think what's the way to solve this, and so I wanted to ask you, what do you think is the solution? More protests? Is it a social engine? What are your thoughts?
Me personally,
Yes.
It's a few things. Protests are good, but the thing is that, like, one of the things that's kind of unfortunate about the protests last summer is that while a lot of people got very excited about it early on, that the enthusiasm for making actual systemic change has kind of tailed off, to say the least. I think that I saw something. Connecticut is going to be doing something that it's kind of reparations without calling it reparations. What they're doing is, what they're voting on anyway, is that all children below the poverty line, which of course proportionally is going to affect black people more, they're going to give like a $3,200 bond. So when you're born, the idea that you start off with some wealth to try to fix the system. So again, it's a way to it's small. It's not going to fix the problem, but any measure in that direction will be helpful.
You know what? Before we get out of this, I want to ask you guys one last thing.
Sure.
What do you guys say? Now, a fan of mine brought me these stats, and their argument here is essentially that there's an underlying problem in the world. It's not just America. It's a world. This is a problem all around the world. For instance, in the UK, we know the disproportionate effects of race when it comes to the prison population here, but those effects are actually the same in the UK. In the UK, for instance, 22% of stop and frisk happen to be black people, but black people are only 3% of the population there. They account for 10% of the arrests and 13% of the prison population, and 22% of all stop and searches by police they account for. They're talking about 3% of the population. So in that case, that means that, so when people say it's a systemic problem in America, this seems to be a systemic problem all over the world.
Mm-hmm. I think, and I want to amend something onto my statement, because I think there is one additional thing that people who look like me and Nicholas can do, and that's listen. I think a lot of the times, a lot of people who are like me, who are white, progressive people, who are middle class, upper middle class, are used to being in charge a little bit, and we're used to making the decisions. It's generational. I mean, we've talked about it, and we're still trying to make the decisions here. And frankly, I have come to understand, and having a Prolib channel helped, that I don't truly understand it, and I never can. And I think we have to admit that, and I think we have to get the fuck out of the way sometimes and listen to the African American and minority communities about, hey, this is what we need. This is what will fix it. And then do it. Help them do it. And the truth of the matter is that minorities need more of us to be their allies, because they don't have enough of them. And they need more of us to be allies, to get the fuck out of their way, and that tell other white people to get the fuck out of their way and let them help themselves, help themselves. And I wanted to amend my statement and add that on.
No, I appreciate that, and I think that's true. I see a lot of well-intentioned people who do make a lot of big blunders because they kind of charge off ahead and do some things, and like I don't know if you guys remember after the 2016 election, there was the whole thing with the safety pin. Basically what it was is that, of course, you know, a lot of people on the left were upset about Trump getting elected, which, you know, myself included. And so it was started, white people were doing this thing of wearing a safety pin to let black and brown people know that they were a safe person to go talk to about the election, as though we're all waiting around, you know, for white people to save us. And that was really obnoxious and condescending. And I'm like, yeah, you mean well, but no, just no. That's not. That's, you know.
Listen,
it's
I'm
very
sorry. It wasn't me, but dude, I am so sorry.
Yeah, it was very
you know,
patronizing. Say again. Go ahead, Nate.
No, it's funny. It's Trump actually improved his numbers in the black and Latino vote. I didn't think it was possible, but he did in his last election.
Yep,
It's like,
sure
it's like,
did.
what the hell? Well, you know, what are people thinking? It's like, I don't know.
I'm thinking it was based on religion and stuff, which is also still weird because he's the most, you know, amoral, irreligious person that's ever occupied the office, including the ones that were probably atheists. But yeah, he
Well,
said
there's
the right magic words, you know.
There's that meme of him and Obama standing next to each other, or, you know, side by side, whatever, and they said, guess which one has 5 kids by 3 different women? You know, and it's funny, but at the same time, it speaks to what Nate was talking about earlier. There's just this perception that we have of black males in our society, wherever it comes from. I'm not saying I know where it comes from, but we just have this perception of black males in our society, and I don't know how to fix it. It's one of the things that I don't know how to fix.
Where it comes from is the justification of the black codes. What it came from is that when they justified, if somebody's unemployed, they are criminals, right? Criminals are bad people. Look at all of them. Those are all bad. The reason why they're working on plantations, before it was they were slaves. They were called Uncle Joe. That was Uncle Joe, Aunt May. After that, they were called criminals and blankers and all this other stuff, right? Those are bad people. And if people are told that for generations, right, for years, then eventually they're going to buy into it. And it wasn't only the South. A lot of people think it was confined, but there were 2 great migrations in the United States where millions of black people left the South to northern states. And to show you how tough it was even at that point in time, because, you know, the black slavery, unfortunately, after slavery ended, black slavery under the black codes had led to that was economic power, right? For you to have free labor, right? You have all these black people who are sitting in free labor. That's economic power in the South. But when those black people started leaving in the Great Migration, now the 2 Great Migrations occurred for the same reason. There were world wars in Europe. We stopped immigration from Europe, and the factories up in north in Detroit and all the factories and stuff in New York, they needed people to work them. So when you get free, you know, people who work for almost nothing, you get them from the South, and you had millions of people go from like places to places like Detroit, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, New York. Oh, that's why you have these large black populations in these parts of the country. So there were 2 Great Migrations, and to stop people from leaving, police would actually go to the train stations and stuff and arrest people on the train station trying to leave the South because they wanted to keep them down there.
Yep.
But I digress.
There were actually. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I was just going to add on, but go ahead. I was going to say there were actually wagon trains that were going to go west where people would pay the wagon trains not to take black people on their wagon trains out west.
Yeah. And to Nate's point, it goes what he said about, you know, those are bad people. It's very Calvinistic, you know, the idea that, you know, there's elect and unelect, and the unelect are not worthy of help because they're not favorite of God. But you know, the other thing too is, and then because obviously black people were treated so badly for so long, there's this fear in white people that black people would rise up and get revenge for what was done to us and our ancestors for so long. And so it's created this thing of like, you know, so I heard it's called like Superman syndrome, where like, you know, even like, you know, black children, people will perceive them as being more adult or more, you know, older than they really are. I saw a video a few years ago. It showed it was in Britain. There was this black guy, and he was obviously out with this white woman, and there's this drunk white dude menacing the two of them and saying all sorts of horrible things. And it's clear the white guy's trying to pick a fight. He's trying to get the black guy to fight him. Black guy's just standing there, his arms folded, just being quiet, saying nothing. After lots and lots of abuse, of verbal abuse, the white guy, I guess he figures he's not getting the fight he wants, so he pushes the black guy. Black guy lays him out with one punch. One of the people who responded to that video said, "These black people need to learn that they can't hit people for over words." And I said, "Well, a few things. First off, what these black people? There was one black dude, so you're already saying, looking at this behavior which you ascribe as negative, and you're applying it to black people." And this is part of the problem.
Yeah.
White people, like white terrorists and stuff like that, we never say, "Oh, look at white people doing this stuff." But for black people, we get judged. Anyone who does anything even remotely wrong, and we all get judged. Secondly, he didn't hit the guy because of the words. He hit the guy because he was pushed. The guy committed a battery against him, and he responded in kind.
Right.
So then when I pointed this out to the person, said, "You need to go back and look at that video again, because that's not what happened." Then they came back and said, "Well, that bigger, stronger black guy has to learn that he could hurt somebody." Well, if you look at the video, the white guy was 3 or 4 inches broader. The black guy was smaller, he was athletic, but he was not a big, ripped, built guy. But again, this person perceived this as this big, hulking, dangerous black guy, when that was not at all the case. The white guy was bigger and was the aggressor, but yet he was still chastising the black guy and all black people, by extension, even after watching the video 2 or 3 times.
But that's ingrained in American culture from the beginning. What's it called? A Birth of a Nation from the KKK. It was the KKK movie that set the KKK when they had like 500,000 at the Capitol. Remember that? Well, I don't remember that, but that was the historical context. The KKK was extremely popular in the United States. They were not a terrorist organization. They were extremely popular in the United States. And they had a movie, Birth of a Nation, but in there they portrayed black people as beast, as angry, and it was extremely popular. And it's funny because even in black cinema, when you talk about Gone with the Wind, the first black person to win an Oscar was the woman who played the slave, and they wouldn't let her accept her Oscar on the main stage. She had to accept it out the back. Yeah, she had to accept it out the back. Yep. So it's horrible what I think we've gone through. But I want to say that today, those same preconceived notions are still there about black people. They just are. How do we change that? How do we change it from when now we can bullshit ourselves all we want, but if we walking down the street and you see some black cats, you feel a different way than if you see 3 white guys. You just do. And it's funny because when they take us to training, they say everybody goes and everybody wants to have the right answer. So we go in there like, all right, well, here's 3 guys and here's 3 guys. Which ones are you more, do you feel a little more angsty about? And people were trying to say, oh, the white guys, and people bullshit. Which one do you really, which one? Everybody picking the black guys. And they were like, well, you see what you just done? You've just judged these 3 people based on things that you believe that you know, things that you believe that you see, and not just judge the situations, the facts and circumstances that change the game. Not who you're fighting, but what you're fighting and what's going on around you. Yeah. And that's something that I think, but if you ask most people in this room, in this hangout right now, the truth, if you're walking down the street and you see 3 black guys versus 3 white guys, there is a different feeling for both. And until that changes, it's a different feeling for us. It's a different feeling for that officer on the street. That first year when they're an officer, when they walk down the street, they see 3 black kids versus 3 white kids. They're feeling the same way we do. And how do we change that feeling?
Well, there's a great show how deeply ingrained it is in our society. I grew up, I'm of mixed race. I grew up with my white grandparents in a white neighborhood. The black neighborhood was wherever I was standing. I did not grow up around too many black people, so that when I started having more interactions, I was not necessarily comfortable because when all the talk about black people is always negative. It took me a while to actually be comfortable in a group of black people because I didn't know how to do that. Here I am, a black guy, and been called all sorts of names by the white people around me, but yet still this became this in also in like internalized like loathing. I had to grow out of that. It was hard.
There's this episode of Star Trek. Yeah, I brought it up.
Oh, dear Lord.
Yeah, I brought it up. Where they meet Abraham Lincoln in space. Okay, and it's corny,
Those
but
reasons,
it has
those
one of my
reasons,
favorite
yeah.
moments of all time. When Abraham Lincoln is talking to Lieutenant Uhura, and he calls her the female version of the N-word, essentially, and immediately apologizes. He says, "I'm sorry. You know, in my time, I know people use that to describe property," and she laughs. Because in the future, racism is so dead that she doesn't even know what he's talking about. Like, what are you talking about? And Captain Kirk gives this little speech about, you know, how in the future we're delighted with our differences. We celebrate them. And until we get to a day where we celebrate our differences, stuff can't change.
Small correction on that
note,
episode.
Unfortunately, fellas, I got to go. But go ahead.
Nate, your channel.
I
real
was
quick.
going to say,
We got a link for Nate's channel, but Nate, do you want to quickly let us know who
What
you
did
are
I
and where they can
forget?
find you?
Oh, just Google search Nate the Lawyer. I do mostly police breakdowns. From a legal perspective. So I kind of
It's great stuff.
I take you just through I just take you through the. I try to do it with clinical precision. Here's the law. Here's the facts, and here's the situation, and then we'll try to apply that law to the facts and see how it comes up. Sometimes people are happy with the conclusion, sometimes they're not. But the best part about it is that just by taking the law and applying them to the facts, you get to come to your own conclusion. So that's kind of what I do.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming
That's
on,
good
Nate,
stuff.
and really appreciate having you, and we look forward to having you back.
It's good to see you,
It's
Nate.
great to see you guys too. I got two little girls. I gotta put to bed.
Yeah. All right, Nate. Thank you
Nice
so
to meet
much.
you.
All right. Bye.
No worries, brother.
So what was the other? I was going to say too. We got, or you can have me back on your channel. Wink, wink. I'm gonna try to. Okay.
Joe, what did I forget about the
probably
episode?
already gone.
I'm curious.
I
I just
think
watched it recently.
What?
well, no, the correction is that the word he used is not actually the female version of the N-word. What it is, it's the female version of the word Negro, which is not quite the same as what you
Right. Correct. Yeah.
So
But the point still stands.
yeah, I think it's. I think. Well, I
Well,
was
yeah,
looking for the Gene
yes,
Roddenberry quote. Yeah, please.
Yeah,
Joe.
well, it's still the fact that he was pointing out that she was of a different race and in a way that wasn't always used in a good way.
Right. And what's important about it is that she doesn't even know what he's talking. She's just like, what is he talking about?
Yeah. But it is a good episode. It's a good point. I mean, I think the problem is, what's kind of strange in our society right now is there's again, it comes largely from the right wing. There are people who are just totally against the idea of diversity. Like they actually think it's a negative thing. And there's guys like Tucker Carlson actually pumping the idea that it's negative. And he tries to point out to some successful societies that are largely homogeneous, and again, of course, ignores all the ones that are successful that are more heterogeneous because that doesn't suit his narrative.
Right. Well, fuck Tucker Carlson. So.
Oh Jesus! Yeah. We need to do a stream entitled "Just Fuck Tucker Carlson." I think that
Fuck Tucker Carlson.
I really think yeah.
I definitely want in on that one.
Every channel on YouTube should do that stream. Actually,
I wanted to say there was a thing. My father, grew up at a time when the issue was much more women's rights and the emancipation of women, and he sat me down and he was talking to me about it at one point, and he laughed and he said he could never understand why guys would be so stupid as to think that this was a bad idea. And he's like, we get to be in charge, but so what? We make at least as many bad decisions as anybody else. And
sure.
In general, you increase diversity, you increase the number of people who are going to put up different ideas and hopefully get more likely to get the right decision. And there's a reason guys are having more
here's
heart attacks, and there's a reason. So he was like, you know, if you really care about yourself, you care about diversity, and you care about other people, and you care about. And I always thought that was an interesting perspective. I do think, especially white people here, feel like they're losing something if they're pro diversity, and I think that's wrong.
Especially straight white males, they are so angry right now.
Yeah, the problem is there's something about the right wing mind that's very much the mindset is very much zero sum game. Like
Yes.
so one person can't gain unless another person loses, and of course that's not really how it works. And not even in economics, which you think that's supposedly their bailiwick. But the thing is, you know, the pie isn't fixed. You know, the amount of wealth in the society isn't fixed. It can grow, it can shrink. And so, you know, actually, the sad part is, you know, capitalist society actually depends on the free flow of money. So the more money, the more diverse the money pool is spread out, the easier it is for it to generate more wealth. You know, that's why I would, you know, it never makes sense to me that guys are okay with the wage gap being what it is for women, because hey, if you got a spouse or a girlfriend, and if they were actually earning equivalent, then you both have more money to do whatever you're going to do. You as a unit are more successful, and I'm talking from a heterosexual perspective right now because I'm a heterosexual. But you know, it's made no sense. Like,
yeah, I sent a story to Nick earlier. The Hamptons are having an issue this year because they've made the prices so high to live in the Hamptons, and they've made it so hard to find a job with a living wage that there's nobody to do the service jobs. All these restaurants are having to shut down early, or they can't even open for the season because there's no poor people to work there for all the rich people. And it's like, they've even banned multi-family housing. In other words, you can't live with roommates in the Hamptons. So like, what are poor people supposed to do? Well, they're moving away. They're going somewhere else. And all the Hamptons are like, well, who's going to pick up our trash? And who's going to service our cheeseburgers? Well, nobody, because they can't afford to live here anymore. Well, I mean, we're getting to, you know, it's the second Gilded Age, essentially. And the last time we fixed the Gilded Age was with the New Deal. And we're going to have to do something like that again.
Well, one of the restaurants said that they needed, I think they said they needed 7 cooks to operate, and they could only get 3. And so like, okay, we're not even going to bother opening. Like, we kind of hope our customers understand. I just dropped a link to that. There was a New York Times article, so I dropped a link to that in the live chat. What were you going to say, Joe? And then we really got to start wrapping it up. But
yeah,
and then I have 2 things I want to point out.
I'm going to go to bed at some point.
What gets me about that is that, you know, when wages were lower, or have been lower, and it's always like, well, that's what the market will bear. Well, the market's now saying, you know, fuck your low wage. I can't or won't work for your shit wage anymore. And so that means, you know, you're not going to get people, you know, and it's strange. And people are blaming the right wingers are blaming the $300 extra in unemployment, which is piddly shit. That's not what's keeping people out of work. In fact, it only affects like 10% of the workforce, if that was even less than that. So the idea that that's what's holding out the other 90% is kind of ridiculous. Right. You know, and again, I think you're right about another Gilded Age Prolib, and I think that again, that's actually bad for capitalism. It's actually going to make the wealth shrink, and that's actually counterintuitive to what they think they want.
Sure. I mean, where I live, and this will be my last point, and then I promise I'll shut up. Where I live, the average rent for a 2-bedroom apartment is $1,500 a month. That means you've got to be earning $54,000 a year to be able to comfortably afford rent and live, you know, eat and pay all of the rest of your bills and your car insurance and your internet and whatever else, much less your Netflix. That's not $10 an hour, guys. That's not $15 an hour. That's not $25 an hour. So you have got this discrepancy between housing and wages. And I don't know how to fix that outside of very strict regulations like a New Deal. All right, I'm done. I'll shut up.
My one last thing is actually just to kind of extend Ethan's point. I recently helped a friend move from Texas up to Philadelphia. And in trying to secure rent, or lease, I should say, all the agencies wanted you wanted you to basically prove that you had triple the rent amount as your monthly income. So the rent's like typical rent is about for one bedroom is about $800, which is $2,400 a month, which works out to $15 an hour. So just to qualify to get an apartment, and obviously if you're making that little, you're not doing very well. But just to qualify to rent an apartment in Philadelphia, you need to be making between $15 and $18 an hour. So if you're making less than that, you literally cannot qualify to have a place to live.
Right. No one's going to give you an apartment. Yep. Right. You're not going to qualify for one.
And it's in the Hamptons too, because that's actually not that far from. I'm about an hour away from the area they're talking about. I'm about 2 hours, and it's about an hour and a half or 90 minutes before it gets even close to reasonable. So it's and nobody wants to drive. Nobody is going to drive that far for those wages. You
can't afford to. You literally can't afford to do it because there's no public transportation because they banned that too.
NIMBY.
$2 super chat from Sinister Porpoise. The problem is insufficient. No, the problem, insufficient Jägermeister production.
Well, that's a problem everywhere.
At a minimum, insufficient consumption. I don't know if there's I haven't tested the supply, but yeah. Thank you, Sinister, for your support. I wanted to point out two things. And first of all, so we're going to talk about Ethan in just a second. But when you go to sub to his channel, and when you go, if you end up bumping into him on our Discord, on another Discord, anything like that, what I think you should do is suggest to him that he cannot quit the YouTubes or anything like that until he comes on In Time one more time for a show on UBI, because we've had that big requested a lot, and Mowdy wants to do that, and Mowdy wants it explained to him. So he's can't. So we're going to apply peer pressure and see if we can rope him into that. But
I will do a show with Mowdy on UBI. I'm committing to it live on the air. I will do a show with Mowdy on UBI.
We have it. Thank you, because he's been wanting that explained to him, and it's been a long time since I've looked at it. So I'm probably nowhere near qualified. Marvelous, thank you. So the two things I wanted to say.
Me either, but I'll do it anyway.
All right, we'll oh dear Lord, well, this is gonna be the blind leading the blind. But so the two things that I wanted to quickly mention. First of all, just as we were talking, we got this. This was NBC broke this, that the U.S. House has voted 285. This was today at 8:17, so that was a short while ago. U.S. House has voted 285 to 120 to remove Confederate statues from public display in the Capitol, as well as the bust of Chief Justice Roger B. Taney, who wrote the 1857.
I'm sorry, what was the vote count?
It was 285 to 120.
So that's like 60, 70 Republicans that
voted for that. A number of Republicans have to have joined, which encourages me. Now, this is, of course, the People's House, so it's not the Senate, which is harder to get things like this passed. But if you've had that many, that's an interesting. I think there's a shot, but they're going to.
How does Tim Scott not vote for that, though? I mean, seriously. I mean, you've got Scott. You're going to get Romney. I'm being honest. I mean, he's not going to be able to go back to his constituents and say I'm voting against that. He's not going to be able to do it.
And this is one of those subtle things. We're talking about how do we change things. Well, when we stop venerating Confederate traitors and try to put the Confederacy behind us, then we can one step toward reconciliation.
Yeah, the guy that I mentioned earlier who gave the Cornerstone speech where he said that the Confederacy was based upon the fact that the Negro is not equal to the white man. Yeah, he has a statue at the Capitol, by the way. His name's Alexander Stevens. So, yeah, go ahead. What were we going to say, Nick?
I don't remember the number you gave. It was 67. 67 Republicans joined Democrats.
670.
Okay, yeah. So that's it. So that was the first piece of interesting news that I thought was apropos and wanted to bring up.
I think you'll get Scott. You'll get Romney. I think there's 10 Republicans that'll do it. I do. I think you can get 60 on that.
I think
you'll get Murkowski, maybe Collins,
and a couple are kind of on their way out the door. Well, Murkowski's sort of iffy on the Republican Party anyway. So I think you can. I think it's going to happen. The other one that was a biggie that was actually a very big concern of mine, and I has now changed, which was interesting. So the Ohio legislation passed in the House of Representatives a bill which said that you were no longer going to be allowed to record police officers in public. In public, you cannot record police officers. Passed by
That is not going to stand.
the
That will
Ohio-
not. That won't last.
It's already
Record the
done.
cops, guys.
So the
It won't stay.
The,
That would not hold up in court. Record the cops.
Where's that at?
well, actually, they've now reversed it. So they have passed
Yeah.
a second substitute bill, HB 22, which redefines obstruction of justice. So or redefines obstruction of justice back to the original. So it's considered obstruction of justice to be recording them. That was the first bill. It had only passed in the House. It had not. It had not actually
Where?
gone to the Ohio.
Where?
In Ohio.
Yeah,
Was,
it's
HB
not going to pass. Right. It's not going to pass constitutional muster.
They have now redefined
You
it.
can't.
And so they have now passed a new version, which actually, with the support of 8 Republicans, actually now redefines protecting a person's right to record video and audio in public events, including but not limited to of police officers. So at least
you have to, because if
that.
I'm walking down the street, right, and I'm streaming to Streamlabs to my YouTube channel for whatever reason, I'm doing with my iPhone, and there's a cop behind me, I've committed a crime. I mean,
well, yeah, but
you
they're
know,
not going
it's
to
not
enforce
going to
it
hold up in
except
court.
if and when, but that's sort of what I found scary about it was it's the same as it wasn't as bad, but I had the same feeling as I did when Trump was having Black Lives Matter protesters yanked off the streets with a hood on their head and thrown into the back of vans by police officers in military uniforms. That's Pinochet level shit. That's Pinochet, and it was happening here, and they were being tried by a secret court where there was no records. There was no records. They were even detained. So
Yes.
now that seems to be kind of done, but it was just the fact that this could even be entertained by the Ohio legislature. But at any rate, they have now passed a second bill which, instead of eroding your ability to record police officers at public events, now presumably guarantees it. So 2 pieces of good news.
There is no federal circuit court in the United States where that would have lasted for more than 3 seconds. The judge would have laughed them out of the court. And there's very few DAs who would have tried to prosecute it because Bregwin says it's a First Amendment issue.
Yeah.
And the truth of the matter is, if you're in public, you have the expectancy that someone may be recording you, because I could be taking a picture of a building, but you might happen by, and now I've got a photo of you, but I didn't take a photo of you. I happened to take a photo of you while I was taking a photo of something else. So I can't be anyway.
Well, and that's already been established by the Supreme Court, and obviously because of supremacy, a state could not undermine that. But having said that, I have no idea what the argument was. So somebody in the Ohio legislature thought they could get away with it because they don't want to get there. I don't know what the bill read, but I was surprised that we lived. I was like, okay, that tells me something about the time that could even be entertained and could actually pass.
Well, sure.
Sure. At any rate, gentlemen, let's start with Ethan. Where can people find you? And you've got a stream coming up. Is it tomorrow or day after?
Listen, it's really hard to find me, and I'm sorry about that. I'm not on Twitter. I'm not on Instagram. I'm not on Facebook. I'm not on Twitch. I'm not anywhere. So it's basically impossible to find me, and I don't have a Discord. But you can go to my YouTube channel if you'd like to, youtube.com/progressiveliberal. And tomorrow night at 7, I'm doing my goodbye stream. And I will talk about why I left suddenly. I will talk about what caused that, what was the issue why I left so suddenly, and what the future may hold. So tune in tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern, the final episode of Prolib Live.
All right, so Prolib Live, a show that hey, we sort of cross-streamed more than once, and it was a genuine pleasure. It was always a pleasure having you around. Anyways, he is going to be doing that show. The link both to his stream and to that show are in the description. Joe, tell us a bit about yourself and where people can find you.
Well, like Prolib, I'm not on a lot of different things, and I am on Facebook, but that's for personal stuff, not for other things. But my YouTube channel, which I do plan on making videos again, I finally have gotten the inspiration to start to do some work. I want to at least start off with at least a video every other week, and then work my way up to like at least one a week, and who knows after that. And I am in various streams. I'm obviously in all the ones that Nick does and Chris Mowdy, and also Black Culture Geeks. Occasionally I'm a guest on theirs on Saturdays. So hope to see you all in the various tubes.
Oh, I do need to amend my statement. If you want to say hi to Batsy, she has promised to be in chat during the stream tomorrow night.
Ooh, okay.
So,
all right.
She's promised that she'll be there. So if you want to talk to Batsy, that's the way to do it.
I will be there.
And if you don't know who Batsy is, don't worry about it.
Yeah, just put a B. Just put a B. That's
just put a B.
Good enough. So I'm going to be there. So I'm looking forward to that. And oh dear Lord. So let's see. Well, thank you all for joining us. If you've gone this far, I hope that means you like the stream. So one great way to support us is like and subscribe. That really helps us out with the algorithms. So yeah, about the only God left in this world is going to be a technological one. We worship the algorithm. So please, if you liked it, one easy way to support us is to hit like and subscribe. Also, if you have any comments, you want to leave the comments down in the bottom. We read them all, and we do answer most of them. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Nate, for coming on. Thank you, Joe, and thank you, Ethan. Glad to have you. Now we've been
Thanks
doing
for having me, man.
Oh, my pleasure. So we've been doing a poll, and let's see. The question was very poorly worded, but was the Chauven sentence just, or was it right? Votes for too high, 0. Votes for too low, 1. And that doesn't sound right. No, we had 2 votes for too low, and 7 votes for it was about right. So that was
about right.
Yeah, all right. So thank you all for joining us, and we will catch you. I think I'm going to be on Prolib's channel tomorrow, just in the live chat, and then on Friday we're going to have our call-in show, and you guys can call in and have a chat with myself and guest. And we have was it the Digital Hammurabi? He's going to be was he the one that we have? Wow, I'm getting tired. That was at the beginning of the stream. So we have sorry, Dr. Josh on the 17th. Tuesday the 17th, he's going to be on to discuss apologetics for the Old Testament, which is a very interesting subject. We've already covered the book of Daniel quite extensively, so looking forward to having Dr. Josh on. So thank you all for joining us. I will also have to go check on my children, but then I'll be in the Discord in just a few minutes. Ethan, if you want to join us in the Discord, if you have a little time, I know you probably have to get to bed, but the
sure, I can come in for a couple minutes. Sure.
Oh, wonderful, and Joe, I hopefully you can. So in the In Time Discord, we'll be dropping the link one more time. If you guys want to join us there in the voice lounge, I'll be in a few minutes. But until then, thank you all for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you on Friday.